Goldsboro B-52 crash. In January 1961, a U.S. Air Force B-52 bomber broke apart mid-air over Goldsboro, North Carolina, carrying two Mark 39 hydrogen bombs. These were thermonuclear weapons, each 250 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. During a routine flight, the bomber developed a fuel leak, leading to the crew losing control. As the aircraft disintegrated, the two hydrogen bombs were accidentally released. One bomb's parachute deployed, allowing it to land relatively intact, while the other slammed into a muddy field. What makes this event terrifying is that one of the bombs came perilously close to detonating. Of the 4 safety mechanisms designed to prevent accidental detonation, 3 had failed. Only a single low-voltage switch prevented a nuclear disaster. The crash could have wiped out much of North Carolina, causing unimaginable destruction and fallout. The event remained classified for decades, highlighting the risks associated with nuclear weapons during the Cold War. The Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project was a top-secret U.S. research initiative to develop nuclear weapons during World War II. It began in 1939 after fears that Nazi Germany was working on its own atomic bomb. Led by physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer and General Leslie Groves, the project brought together some of the greatest scientific minds, including Albert Einstein and Enrico Fermi. The research was conducted across several sites, with Los Alamos, New Mexico, serving as the main hub. In 1945, the first successful test of an atomic bomb, known as the Trinity test, occurred in the New Mexico desert. Later that year, atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, leading to Japan's surrender and the end of World War II. However, the Manhattan Project's legacy is controversial. While it ended the war, it also ushered in the nuclear age, creating weapons capable of global destruction. The secrecy surrounding the project kept the public unaware of its implications until it was too late. Project MK-Ultra. Project MK-Ultra was a CIA program that focused on mind control and psychological manipulation during the height of the Cold War. It officially began in 1953, with the goal of developing techniques to control human behavior, potentially for use in espionage and interrogation. The program involved unethical experiments on unwitting participants, including dosing them with LSD, exposing them to extreme psychological stress, and using hypnosis. Universities, prisons, and hospitals were often the sites for these experiments, with many subjects unaware they were part of the program. One of the most infamous cases was Frank Olson, a CIA scientist who was secretly given LSD and later died under suspicious circumstances. His death was ruled a suicide, but evidence suggests he may have been murdered to silence him. The full extent of MK-Ultra was revealed in the 1970s through investigations by the Church Committee, but many details remain unknown due to the destruction of most records. The program highlights the lengths governments will go to in the name of security, often at the expense of ethics and human rights. The Lai Massacre. On March 16, 1968, during the Vietnam War, U.S. soldiers from Charlie Company entered the village of My Lai in South Vietnam. Believing the village harbored Viet Cong fighters, they massacred hundreds of unarmed civilians, including women, children, and the elderly. The atrocities were horrific. Many victims were tortured, mutilated, and killed in cold blood. However, the army initially reported the operation as a victory, claiming that 128 Viet Cong had been killed in combat. The truth came to light in 1969 when a whistleblower, Ron Riddenhauer, exposed the massacre by writing letters to government officials and journalists. Investigative reporter Seymour Hersh broke the story to the public, sparking international outrage. Lieutenant William Calley, the officer in charge, was court-martialed and convicted for his role, but he served only 3.5 years under house arrest. The My Lai massacre highlighted the moral failures of war and the lengths to which governments will go to suppress inconvenient truths. The Watergate scandal. In 1972, what seemed like a simple burglary at the Democratic National Committee headquarters in the Watergate complex turned into one of the most infamous political scandals in U.S. history. The break-in was orchestrated by individuals connected to President Richard Nixon's re-election campaign. Their goal was to wiretap phones and steal confidential documents. When the burglars were caught, Nixon and his administration engaged in an extensive cover-up, using federal agencies to obstruct investigations. The scandal unraveled after the discovery of Nixon's secret tape recordings, which captured his involvement in the cover-up. The tapes revealed Nixon's attempts to misuse his presidential powers to silence investigators. In 1974, facing imminent impeachment and loss of public trust, Nixon resigned, the first U.S. president to do so. The Watergate scandal left a lasting impact, exposing the dangers of unchecked political power and reinforcing the importance of transparency in government. The Bay of Pigs invasion. The Bay of Pigs invasion was a failed CIA-backed operation to overthrow Cuban leader Fidel Castro. After Castro aligned Cuba with the Soviet Union, the U.S. saw him as a threat during the Cold War. The plan involved training and arming Cuban exiles to launch a surprise invasion. In April 1961, approximately 1,400 exiles landed at the Bay of Pigs in southern Cuba. However, the operation was poorly planned and executed. The invaders were outnumbered, under-equipped, and quickly overwhelmed by Castro's forces. President John F. Kennedy, who had approved the mission, chose not to provide additional U.S. military support to avoid escalating the conflict into a full-scale war. Within 3 days, the invasion failed, and most of the exiles were captured or killed. The Bay of Pigs was a major embarrassment for the U.S., strengthening Castro's position and pushing Cuba closer to the Soviet Union. It also exposed the risks of covert interventions and shaped Kennedy's cautious approach to future Cold War conflicts, including the Cuban Missile Crisis. Operation Sea Spray. Operation Sea Spray was a covert experiment conducted by the U.S. Navy to test the vulnerability of cities to biological attacks. In September 1950, the military released clouds of Serratia marcescens, a bacteria believed to be harmless, over San Francisco, California, to study how it spread in urban environments. Over several days, the bacteria drifted across the city, exposing thousands of residents. While the government claimed the experiment was safe, shortly after the operation, there was a spike in unusual illnesses. At least one person died from a rare urinary tract infection linked to the bacteria. The public didn't learn about Operation Sea Spray until decades later, when it was revealed as part of broader investigations into unethical government experiments. The incident raised serious ethical questions about consent and the potential health risks posed by biological testing on unsuspecting populations. Operation Sea Spray is now cited as an example of the dangers of secret experiments conducted without public oversight. The Roswell Incident. In July 1947, a rancher near Roswell, New Mexico, discovered mysterious debris scattered across his property. The U.S. military initially announced that it had recovered a flying disc, sparking widespread speculation about extraterrestrial life. However, within a day, the military retracted its statement, claiming the debris was from a weather balloon. Decades later, the incident gained renewed attention as witnesses came forward with claims of alien bodies and a government cover-up. The most widely accepted explanation is that the debris was part of Project Mogul, a classified program that used high-altitude balloons to detect Soviet nuclear tests. Despite this, conspiracy theorists argue that the government has been hiding evidence of alien contact ever since. The Roswell incident remains a cultural phenomenon, inspiring countless UFO investigations, movies, and debates about the existence of extraterrestrial life.